What is up, everybody? It's yours truly, Brandon Simeone, here with kind of a special episode video talking about the Vince McMahon documentary that dropped on Netflix just recently. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge wrestling fan, so this was kind of interesting to me, but I also love the business end of it and all the other stories that aren't wrestling stories that are on TV, but just like the backstage stuff. I just finished watching it. It is currently about, what time is it? 6:06 in the morning. Also, different camera angle from what normally I do with videos when I'm here at work. But just finished watching it. It's 6 hours. Actually, I think probably more about almost near 7 because it kind of goes over in a couple episodes. So it's like 6 hours and 30 minutes. I cannot do it justice. There's going to be other people on here that do. I'm going to give you my opinions on some of the big takeaways of this. Number one, this is a weird thing. Later on in the documentary, Bruce Pritchard, who's in this a lot, says this is just like a hit piece thing on Vince McMahon. And the way they edit it, it seems like it is, but I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to shit on the guy, but he's not doing anything to help himself. Because in wrestling, everyone always says the best character you can do in wrestling is yourself turned up to 11. And Vince McMahon has said constantly, me as a person and Mr. McMahon as a character are two separate beings. And everyone calls bullshit on that. And he said it countless times in this, and the way they edit the video, it just goes straight from, he's like, oh, I'm not a spiteful person. I don't need to get back at people if I don't get my way. Have you watched wrestling? Or at least WWE? He's always done that. Always. This man does not like to lose. He openly said it in this video. I heard the quote on a podcast years ago, where he would say, I'd get hit by my father, but if I'm breathing, I won. Like, that's delusional thinking. Like, dude, you didn't win. Like, let me say this right out flat. Vince McMahon is a monster. With all the allegations that are against him and some of the stuff that he's actually done that has been proven, he is a monster as a human being, and he deserves to be under a prison. Okay? On top of all that, like in this episode entirely too, like they touch on Chris Benoit, which if you don't know the story of him, go look it up. It is a horrific story, and that man is also a monster, but he's a monster because he murdered his wife and like 6 or 7-year-old child. Okay, but the fact that like they say his name and they talk about it is insane. But the other thing is, he tries to say that, oh, well, CTE isn't my problem. I didn't cause Chris Benoit to go nuts. He didn't go nuts. The dude had brain injuries, and you guys had such lax testing on things and concussion protocols and things of that nature. Like, they were trying to debunk that concussions were a bad thing. And even Stone Cold Steve Austin tried to, like, say it too, but I think maybe it's the way they edited it to make him sound like an asshole. They made him sound like a piece of shit, saying, oh, I only had one concussion in my whole life. No, you probably have had more, especially getting smacked in the head with a fucking metal chair. But they paint some dudes in horrible lights like him and like Steve Austin in that case, and then even Undertaker in a couple of cases here. And I know these guys are like friends with Vince still. Like, it's known publicly that Undertaker, The Rock, and John Cena all still currently talk to Vince McMahon. But John Cena wasn't presented badly in this. Like, some dudes weren't. I was amazed Tony Atlas was in this. And Booker T's in it for like a couple little sentences. I think he didn't want to say a lot of negative stuff. And the same thing with Trish Stratus. She's on here like all bubbly and happy about things. I honestly thought that they were going to come into like an allegation where Trish like reveals like she was abused by him in some way. But it wasn't like that. And like she gives an example of how like, oh, I refused to do one thing and then the next week I lost my title. Like Vince McMahon, if he doesn't get his way, he'll make you pay. Like it's the truth. Like it's insane. Like they finally kind of give you an inkling to, I'm jumping all over the place, but they give you an inkling on what his relationship is like with his kids, and it's insane. Like it's weird. Like Stephanie McMahon says, like, was there anything you said no to? And she didn't want to say it, and then her dad's like, well, I said my character, Vince, impregnated Stephanie. And I'm like, I heard about that and I never believed it, but now hearing it come out of his mouth, it's insane. Like, they rehashed so much stuff, like the Montreal stuff and other things of that nature, but it was just insane. And then once in a while, they would like throw a thing in like, oh, we're going to talk about The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. Like, why is that in here? There's no need for that to be in here. Like, you know what I mean? What does that add to anything? No, you just want to talk about your thing. And the same thing like with The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar. Like when he gets concussion and stuff, oh, Vince left. I'm like, you're sharing your story about Vince, but what does this have to do with the overall documentary of everything? Like, in my opinion, that's just how I felt about it. But getting back to this, like, him and Shane, like, originally he left years ago and no one understood why. And a lot of people made assumptions that maybe his dad tried to invite him in the same depravity thing like he did. But maybe that wasn't Shane's speed, because it doesn't seem like he's into that type of weird shit. But apparently it was Shane challenged his dad, like, I'm willing to do this for anything. Like, why won't you listen to me? And he grabs a knife and says, if you're really willing to do it, then stab me in the heart. Take over. Like, actually take over. If you don't do it, then you're a coward or a pussy or whatever. Like, that's demented. This man is insane. Like, literally insane. Like, criminally insane. Like, at least in my opinion. I don't know how else to put that. Like, this dude is deprived and insane. So much so, he didn't show up for the last interview for this documentary, which is insane. Like, the final questions of, like, maybe the allegations. Again, sorry, it is early in the morning, and also I've been up since 11 a.m. yesterday, so it's whatever. Yeah, like, he didn't show up for his last round of interviews, and like they're talking to other people, and it's insane, and it's crazy. And Bruce Pritchard, like, he's his friend. I get it. You've worked for him for so long. He was trying to defend him, saying, well, you know, my wife had cancer, and she was only given 4 years to live, and he helped her out. Good for you. But people like him will do nice things for people in exchange for your, you know, loyalty down the line. Because let's make this clear, if the roles were reversed and you were in a lot of hot shit, there's no reason for Vince McMahon to help you. There's no reason for somebody in that way of helping you. And my biggest takeaway from all this with this wrestling, with this documentary is, I hope people don't paint wrestling in a bad light. Like, yeah, there are bad things that happen in wrestling. There are bad things happening in every industry that's ever existed. Going from film to stage to sports to business practices, everything. There are deprived people in a lot of things. Now, does that negate everything he's built? No, he has given hundreds, if not thousands of people's jobs. He has given entertainment to people for years to come. Like me, I grew up watching wrestling, so I'm very torn on this type of stuff, and I did wrestling. Also, shout out to Tony Atlas. He's in this. Love the guy. Met him a couple of times. He's a really nice person. Always nice to me whenever I bumped into him. But it's just insane. Because even early on, like Tony Atlas says, oh, we abused women. I'm not proud to say I did it, but we didn't give a shit about what women were to us. Because that's just what it was back then. And I don't know, I can't remember who exactly said it, but I think it was Triple H. He's like, anything we did back then, if it was done now, we'd be killed for it. Because it was a different time. You can't judge things of what happened back then, like in the wrestling context to now. I'm not saying like all the allegations of Vince McMahon, from the female referee to the steroid trials to all these things. There's a reporter, I cannot remember his name now. Paul something. Paul Muchnick. I thought for a second they meant Sam Muchnick, who was like a wrestler and a promoter. Probably no relation. He just hates Vince McMahon. He hates wrestling. I don't know what it is with some people about wrestling. Like, they want to shit on it so much. Let me make this clear to you. This right here is my hand, right? I broke this hand wrestling. Mind you, it was stupid how I broke it, but I still did. It's not fake. So I hate when people use that word. It is predetermined, but it's not fake. Even like Hulk Hogan has said this a couple of times in interviews. He's like, when people say it's fake, no one told me that. Because it's not. You still get hurt. But like, I want people to understand this. Like, there are stories in here that get expanded upon in other things. A big thing I would suggest for people to go see is Dark Side of the Ring. There's a lot there with a lot of other stories from other wrestlers. They touch on so much stuff that they have Dark Side of the Rings episodes, like the steroid trial, Vince McMahon taking over a bunch of different territories, Chris Benoit, what else? They talk about Jimmy Snuka in this at one point, which, if you don't believe that TT exists, that man freaking used to do a flying headbutt, which means knocking your head into somebody else. Now, mind you, they don't really land head to head on somebody. It's sometimes a little bit over, or I've even seen people do it where they bump into like your chest meat and stuff. But once in a while, you fuck up on like the trajectory of that, and you can actually smack your head in. You know what I mean? And it's always still alleged because he never got convicted for it. But his wife or girlfriend at the time was killed because was died when they were in a hotel room partying and something. But everyone always says he's done it, and then people believe that Vince McMahon helped him by paying off the cops or whatever. So much so that going down into the future, like, I think this is going back like in 2005 or whatever, that they reopened the case, they arrested Jimmy Snuka, who was old and had Alzheimer's, and then realized that this man isn't fit to stand trial, and then he died right afterwards. Talk about getting away with murder. And that's just my little small assumption of it. There's so many things. Like, at one point in time, even on this, he said, like, the deaths of wrestlers aren't my fault. Yeah, they are. Dude, you pushed a lot of people to the point to where they had to take drugs to keep themselves going. You know, Eddie Guerrero famously died of a drug overdose. His death and Chris Benoit's death were two of the biggest deaths in wrestling of my generation. Unfortunately, one of them was a horrific murder / suicide, and the other one was a heart attack due to an over dependency on medication. But in their deaths come at least a benefit to where they start doing better testing and things of that nature, and guys are taken care of a lot better now than they were back then. It's just disgusting that I'm not even going to get into the current allegation stuff. If you want to hear about that, there's hundreds, if not thousands of hours of podcasts of people explaining that rabbit hole of hell. Because that's the only thing I hope people understand. Like, I hope they don't just see this and just take that as the face value. I hope people go do more research and look into these things. Because I'm not saying it's interesting the fact of, oh, let's learn about all Vince McMahon's depravities. But, like, there is some interest in wrestling history where they talk about these things. And the fact that this was even allowed out and it's not like heavily censored by WWE is crazy. Especially because in the start of 2025, Monday Night Raw is going to be on Netflix. So it's kind of crazy. Vince McMahon put out like a thing on Twitter where he says like, I don't agree with everything that's going to be in this, but I allowed it. Because let me make this clear. Vince McMahon, when he became before like they merged the companies with like Endeavor, UFC, whatever, he owns the rights to Vince McMahon's character, his likeness, what could be done with him with merchandise and things of that nature. That includes documentaries and shit. So that means WWE cannot make a documentary about Vince McMahon without Vince McMahon saying, okay. This was not made by WWE. This was an outside company making this documentary about him. And it goes into a lot of things, including his childhood. He talks about his childhood, and he was talking about how his stepdad would beat him, and apparently his mom would molest him, which has always been something he has said for years. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. Who knows? I don't feel bad for the guy. Because you can't feel bad for him, especially after you hear all of this other stuff. You can't hear all these horrible things and you can't have him go, well, I was, molested by my mother. That doesn't excuse every horrific thing you've done since then. I think it's a decent documentary. It's kind of slow and boring at some points. I'm not going to lie, I did fast forward through some of it. But it's 6 episodes. You can get it done in a night. Man, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about all this. But as you can probably tell, I'm exhausted. I am tired. Please tell me what you guys think of this documentary. Are you going to watch it? Or are you not going to watch it? Is this going to be something you skip? Please let me know down in the comment section below. If you guys want me to do more reviews on like a series like this or other things like that on Netflix, please put your suggestions down in the comment section below. And I will check you guys out later. Peace.